right, shape up, you malcontents. Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Boy, it sounds good to say that. It's been a while because I pre-recorded a bunch of them. Anytime I say pre-record now, I think of George Carlin. It's like, when else are you going to record it? Afterwards? George Carlin, rest in peace, my man. This is Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we've got a, what do they call it? A bubble episode, or like one of those episodes in like a TV sitcom where it's just like the people sitting around in the room. Bottle episode. And but actually this is going to be way better because Sean is fired up. Sean Gonsalves, one of the people joining us. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm ready to preheat the oven.
Sean is handles a lot of our communications. He does a ton of writing on muninetworks.org and generally keeps us, I would say there's a reality check often on how bad my podcasts are to my face, which I appreciate. We'll talk about that. We got Deanne Cuellar. Welcome.
Buongiorno, good day.
Doing outreach work, thinking a lot about how communities can take advantage of helping them get the resources they need and strategizing and stuff like that.
I am.
Anything I'm missing there? Holding us together?
Thank you.
And then we got Rye, the Dr. Professor Ryerson. Welcome.
Chris, it's an incomplete day when we don't get to talk 6 or 8 times, so it's good to be here.
Rye Marcatilio McCracken, definitely the best name at ILSR, and certainly within the program. Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about a variety of different topics. We're going to move through, probably even more than usual. But I would like to start with a fiery one, and then maybe we'll come up with a fiery one. Sean, I was talking to these folks the other day, and they say that they're planning to overbuild the cable network. Just curious if you think that's a good idea or not.
It's an excellent idea. It's a horrible idea to keep using a word that opponents of municipal broadband love to trot out. And frankly,
I think you mean of government-owned networks.
Yes.
Gongs.
The idea, people need to understand that anytime they hear the word overbuild, it means competition. And it's an engineering term that's been hijacked by the telecom monopolists to make it sound like it's this horrible thing to have competition, that somehow it's a waste of money to build networks that compete with one another. And so it drives me crazy when I hear people in this space, particularly advocates for municipal broadband and publicly owned broadband networks, use this term that way. It drives me crazy.
It does, and it's appropriate. I'm going to argue with you, even though I agree vehemently with you, and I also I'm going to jump all around. It's going to be very rare for me not to hold a fixed position. I realize nobody will be used to this. But I myself have gotten lazy about this lately, and I welcome you to call me on it if it keeps happening. But I would say that there's another thing that you didn't mention, which is it's ridiculous to talk about overbuilding. I mean, maybe if you're talking about a really modern, well-run cable network, one might think of a fiber network as being competitive to it in some ways. But often, in many cases, this term might be used where you're talking about building a 4-lane interstate where you've got a dirt road. And these aren't even comparable networks that one can talk about. And just because some company happened to build it first there, they have like the eternal right to be the sole network in that area. But let me push back on you, right? Like, I feel like 10 years ago, there was a lot of effort put into rebranding net neutrality because people were like, the term is boring. People don't understand what it is. It's complicated. Who wants to be for net neutrality? Who wants to be for neutrality? And at the time I was like, this is ridiculous. Like we need to win. We don't need to argue about words. And I felt like on that issue, I was like, and I was right. I mean, we can say in history because like millions of people turned out in favor of net neutrality, even though we never found a better term for it. And so, what do you say to that? The idea of just like, yeah, like the word's not great, but people know what it means and who cares? Let's just move on and get the work done.
The problem with it is that it sticks. I think that's the part that's frustrating for communicators, right? Or people that do communications is that I mean, maybe we should make a list of other sectors where things stick. But like, what's interesting about working in broadband equity is that the top line messages of monopoly ISPs stick. right? So the term overbuild and overinvestment comes from them and not us. But it's frustrating to go into meetings and try to be like coming up with alternative solutions or just trying to solve a problem and like hearing a decision maker using talking points from a monopoly. I think that's what's really frustrating, is that it sticks. And it's like I go to the grocery store, I don't complain that there's multiple brands of salsa. You know what I mean? But like I can go into a meeting and like overinvestment, overbuilding is a message.
Yeah, great point. But points well taken, Chris. I mean, what's that? I can't remember that quote. About something about if you got a small mind if you can't sort of hold two opposing ideas in your head at the same time, something to that effect. And in both things that you're saying are correct. We shouldn't get too caught up in arguing about terminology and actually get stuff done.
Except for where it's important.
Except for where it's important, exactly. And it turned out that it wasn't so important with net neutrality, although I would argue it's because that word neutrality is just an appealing word to people. People like the idea, when you hear, especially in an environment where you hear these arguments about government shouldn't be picking sides, they're out there, there should be neutrality. There needs to be a neutral third party. So I think that word itself is warm to people's ears, but the term overbuilding itself suggests that you're doing something unnecessary. And that is the problem that I have with that term. And I frankly don't like to let people get away with stuff like that. And I really don't like when people, and I don't care what their pedigree is or how many letters they have after their name, you're not going to tell me what to call something. I have a perfectly good grasp of the English language. I know all kinds of the rhetorical tricks that people use, and I'm going to call people on it when I hear it being done.
Well, I was just going to say, if I had to thank anybody for helping us win net neutrality, I would thank the musicians.
Yes. Yeah. The artists and musicians, I think, were tremendous on that. And some of them that are, continuing to work with like Fight for the Future and orgs, Free Press. I mean, a lot of these folks have done great work. Just one second.
Imagine if we could get some celebrities and artists to make a song about muni broadband or stick out on this issue instead of taking these lucrative contracts from the telecom giants to tout their latest product, which
right.
You see all over social media.
I accept that challenge.
We shouldn't use that language. Absolutely not. I think it's not helpful. And especially when, I guess the final point that I would just put on it, because there's so much more we could say about it, but we're going to move on, is that in many cases, we need overlapping networks, right? Like in some places, people are never going to take service from Comcast because they hate Comcast. Even low-income folks don't want that, Internet Essentials, even if they don't have to pay for it. And other people are never going to take a network from the government, right? Because like they don't trust the government because of whether it's misplaced or not, fears of spying and that sort of a thing. So I think the idea that that we have that sort of like, oh, we just got this one perfect network, everything would be great. No, that's not accurate, and that's not how the internet should work. We should have overlapping networks that have different tasks, and I firmly believe that. And I'll fight anyone on it. I want to ask Rye about the big list. We just updated that recently, and that's really cool. What is the big list, and did anything strike you as really interesting about it?
Since late last summer, we've been tracking community-led American Rescue Plan-based broadband projects, infrastructure projects, and we hit a milestone within the last week or so with 250 projects on that big list. So we're tracking 250 different communities around the country doing some sort of broadband project using the Rescue Plan dollars. Some of them are exciting. We're seeing some municipal networks starting out, funding expansions, finishing up with Rescue Plan money. Some stuff is less exciting, the distribution of more hotspots and giving away money to the monopoly providers in certain areas. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but it's exciting to see the good projects on that list.
And one of the great uses of this money so far has been both Baltimore and Detroit planning to use that money and hopefully soon breaking ground on projects to build networks to low-income folks that have been totally left out. And their states have access to many more hundreds of millions of dollars. And in both cases, Maryland and Michigan, I think, are actually not all that supportive of trying to solve this problem in some of their largest cities, which is, I think, really frustrating for many of us. That there are good rules that the federal government has put in place in many cases from the rescue plan dollars, but we see states under the thrall of big cable and telephone companies or just regular politics going after rural voters and not caring about urban voters, I think leading to less opportunities than we would like to see in major metropolitan areas. Sean's done some interesting work, just looking at what's happening in New York State. Sean, what's going on there?
It's actually pretty exciting. Initially, I had just saw the amount that was being put in and not without having thought about what it actually means, which is that New York is venturing into municipal broadband for the first time.
Municipal fiber for the first time, right? Because we still got Tupper Lake sitting up there, and there might be another one or two that we're not familiar with.
Municipal fiber, right? That's an important distinction, but municipal fiber. And so, we've written about the Connect All initiative, which is the state grant program that the governor announced and was passed in the state budget bill in April. It's a $1 billion investment in broadband, which is the largest ever investment in broadband in New York. And part of what the state budget bill did is created an ecosystem to cultivate municipal broadband networks. And a couple of weeks ago, the governor and various other officials, it's a whole consortium of folks working together on this. The Empire State Development Office, the Development Authority of North Country, the Southern Tier Network, and the New York Power Authority. And essentially what it is allowing for is for these nonprofit middle mile network providers to work together to really provide backhaul for municipalities who would like to build out last mile connections. And that's exactly what's going on. And so a couple of weeks ago, they announced a $10 million grant award to 4 different counties. And they're going to build a municipal fiber to the home network in Sherburne. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sherburne, the village of Sherburne in New York, which is in basically the central part of the state. And they're going to be building out to 1,800 homes and businesses. And because they got this money, this was something that the village itself does have an existing municipal utility, Sherburne Electric. And part of what was driving the push for this in the town, even prior to this grant award, was them wanting to have a modern communication system so that their electric utility operates much better. But with the infusion of the money that they'll get from this grant, it is going to allow them, for what they thought was going to be a 4-year process of kind of doing it on their own, to actually building out this network within the next year. They're looking at an open access model, and then to lease out the network to internet service providers who'd like to provide retail service. I'm sure you can talk about some of the challenges that go along with that, particularly in small communities that build open access networks, and sometimes the difficulty in getting, multiple providers to want to operate on that network. But nevertheless, they're moving forward, and they're hoping that by October, the network will have been built out and they'll start lighting up some of their first customers. So the big deal really is that New York is making this foray into fiber to the home, municipal fiber to the home.
And that's going to be the focus of an upcoming show. We're going to be focused talking with folks from Empire State Development about some of these projects and what's moving forward. But I wanted to ask you, did you learn any interesting facts in interrupting the mayor on his morning constitutional?
Yeah, he was walking this morning, and I actually called Sherburne Electric looking to speak to anybody, and they said, "Hold on a minute, let me see who I can put you in touch with." And then she put me in touch with the mayor, and he answered his phone on the first ring. And I think it's that kind of like small community connectivity, meaning in the larger scheme of things, I think is one of the things that is so attractive about these kind of networks, where you can actually call people and talk to people in the local community, and there's a sense of accountability and a sense of responsibility to one another to meet the needs of that particular community. They're early on in the process. And so, for example, they're not exactly sure if the grant money is going to cover the cost of construction for the entire network. But I can tell you that they are determined to move forward and build out this network in any way possible. Certainly the infusion of money from the state means that it's going to speed things along pretty quickly. And although the mayor didn't say anything about this, that area is served by Charter and Frontier, And, given the track record of those companies in other areas, I'm quite sure that
they are underbuilt.
They are underbuilt, and folks are tired of it and would like to see there be ubiquitous access to high-speed internet connectivity at reasonable rates. They haven't got to the point yet where they've started discussing rates. Affordability is certainly, a top priority in building out this network. I think the mayor also is very much aware that they are for the tip of the spear as it relates to this experiment, shall we say, in New York with municipal fiber to the home project. So they are acutely aware of that and are really interested in making sure they get this right, because if they don't, it could certainly have, some cascading effects in terms of what other communities think about as this being an alternative to relying on the local monopoly provider.
So we're going to learn more about that also, I suspect. I don't know for sure, but we're going to learn a lot about what's happening in New York on June 28th for those of us who will be going to the event in Binghamton. There's Southern Tier 8 is having an event there. They're also looking at doing some interesting things. So for people who have an ability to get to Binghamton, that's going to be cool. And while I'm at it, I should just note that the 21st and 22nd of June, going to see some cool event in Cleveland, joint event from, I believe, Pew and Charitable Trusts, and with Catherine DeWitt and Next Century Cities sponsoring that event. So this show that will come out right after, I think you and I have left Nashville for the Fiber Connect, Sean, so we won't plug that, but I'm looking forward to that show. But speaking of what states are doing, I feel like, the opposite of New York might be Texas in a variety of ways. Deanne, you've been given a lot of thought to what Texas is going to do with the IIJA money, trying to track that down. What are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing that there's more than one state, more than just Texas, that wants to pass on funding to build community broadband infrastructure. And we really won't know what's going to happen until the deadline passes. So what we're doing is we're encouraging communities that live in those states to get ready with their own letters of intent. So we've been studying what happens next. And so what happens next is that communities need to be ready to file their own separate letter of intent as political subdivisions. So I think for me as a community organizer and someone working at the grassroots to the Beltway in that direction is what I also learned in this process is like how the political subdivision is defined is different state by state. So I think there's the good and bad to that. But so what communities and organizations should be doing right now is trying to figure out, like, do they have the legal know-how to file letters of intent when the deadline passes? It's June. They should be, and so July 18th is not that far away. They should be working on that now. And they should also be working really closely with a telecommunication policy lawyer or analyst or whoever they can get to see like what list of organizations or political subdivisions can file those letters of intent. So I think there's an opportunity in the chaos here for local communities to really get creative. I'm on the other side of it. I think that for lack of better words, it just really sucks that there are geographies that are willing to pass on resources on infrastructure. And that's a whole other issue that deserves a whole other podcast. So there's more than one thing happening here with states. And then I think the last thing I would point to is that, unless I'm wrong, y'all can tell me this, I think the majority of the states that are rumored to be passing on this funding are mostly states in the South, which are mostly where communities of color that need, the rural and urban, that need these resources the most. So it's a thing.
That's a great point. One thing you mentioned about political subdivisions within states, needing to get creative, particularly if it's in a state that is going to bypass on the BEAD funds. One thing that we did learn at Mountain Connect was from Alan Davidson, the NTIA secretary or assistant secretary, was that the Middle Mile infrastructure program, that NOFO was also released. Local communities can apply for that money directly. Like the BEAD money goes to the states, but the Middle Mile infrastructure program is available for local communities, I believe, to be able to apply directly to the NTIA. So that, in that limited capacity, that's an avenue of possibility for even for states who opt out of the BEAD money.
That's a really good point. And I think the other thing that we need to do at ILSR, for the Community Broadband Network Initiative team, is gently be reminding people that, like, I think it was you or Chris mentioned that, like, these proposals should be like very attractive proposals on how they're going to create community solutions, right? And so really, like, taking the time to, like, flesh them out with local communities of, like, all of the solutions. So I've seen a lot of middle mile and last mile proposals, which is fantastic. But I also like reminding people that, like, there's still resources available for, like, launching a digital navigator model, putting investment into deploying devices through, out into the community, like lots of devices and literacy programs that already exist. So just making sure that they're looking at all three legs of the stool.
Yeah, I wanted to chime in that I'm looking at a map from May 18th that Telecompetitor put out. I think NTIA actually may have released it over social media at one point. And at that point, 34 states had submitted letters of intent, or 34 jurisdictions, because Puerto Rico is one of them. Texas and Florida did not. Most of the states of the South did. I don't know if you consider Oklahoma part of the South, but they have not as of then. South Carolina had not, and Virginia had not. I can't imagine that Virginia wouldn't. I'm curious. I mean, I feel like what we see, and I'll own up to the fact that I think the BEAD program is burdensome, and if I was a state, I'd be pretty upset at how much it's pushing down on me. And I don't think it's a very well-crafted program in multiple ways. But it's Florida and Texas that are the ones who are making a big deal out of it. And I got to think it's just the governors looking for some way to distinguish themselves as being like the bigger person against government pork. And, and who cares if millions of families in those states don't get connected? That governor's going to have something to try and distinguish themselves, as a crusader against government overreach and whatnot. And my point in using this, the voice, is just that I don't think these are feelings that are sincerely held. It's crass partisan politics that are leading to these decisions, which is unfortunate because we don't get the benefit then of NTIA feeling pressure to reform some of those problematic aspects of the BEAD program.
I've been taking note about how closely your and Sean's kind of alternative personality voice come out when you start using the vocabulary of the more ridiculous side. You both kind of lean back and your shoulders get a little straighter, and you're pretty soon you'll be indistinguishable. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the one difference is that when I do it, I listeners won't know this, but I twirl my mustache at the same time.
Sean, you must have very little fingers to twirl that mustache. So speaking of politics, Gigi Sohn has still not been confirmed. We were recently talking with a couple of other organizations, and there was someone made a reference to the Title II proceeding once there's a fifth commissioner, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if there's going to be a Title II proceeding. Like, I mean, I didn't write anything, but I was just in my head, I was like, yeah, maybe. Like, maybe we just won't see the FCC do anything. The Biden administration seems to be very content to do nothing on this. It's not the only place. The Biden administration has been derelict in multiple oversight organizations. I just saw another one. I don't think it was the CFTC, the Commodities Future Trading something. But there's another significant oversight board where companies are just engaging in abuse of their customers, and the Biden administration just hasn't deigned to confirm anyone. When Donald Trump failed to get confirmations through, we use it as evidence of his incompetence and manifest unfitness for government. And boy, it sucks watching the Biden administration just miss these opportunities. Not to say they don't have challenges, but if you want to be the president, you got to step up and be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I feel like there's sort of one explanation, which is that they're busy or they don't know what they're doing. And the other explanation, which I'm leaning more and more toward, is that they're doing this cynically. They're doing this to curry favor with the cable and telephone companies. They don't want to upset the companies by acting too strongly against them in too many different fields. And they're just leaving the FCC abandoned because it's like a giveaway to the companies that are writing them big checks. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I honestly believe, Chris, that's what's going on. Is that, I'm not going to name names of companies that we've had these arguments with locally, but one of the things that I try to explain to people when you're doing broadband equity work and you're having to go up against monopoly ISPs is that decision makers have like an emotional connection to these companies, like growing up with Coca-Cola. And so it's really hard to get them, like, at the further you climb on the political spectrum doing this work, you find out that, like, it's really difficult. And I know it's not apples to apples, like when we're saying, like, there's this whole other, like, horrible thing going on with with gun ownership and the NRA. It's not the same. However, like, it does feel, as an advocate, just as difficult to try to, like, break the seal.
And I would just add on to that to say that I think one of the issues is that there's a sense that connecting everyone's a really big problem. The only way we can do it is with a really big company. And it's just flawed thinking, because the best way to do it, we see this in the energy program as well, when you really need a lot of things to happen in a lot of places, a distributed solution is the best solution. To have tons of people acting with the same goals in parallel, so you don't have these pipelines that are like getting clogged and single points of failure. And elected leaders don't get that. They don't think like that. They think we need big government, we need big solutions, we need big companies. And I don't feel like there's a political party that appreciates that, thinking distributed is much smarter, particularly in this century.
You gave me this is before I worked over here at ILSR, but you gave me an excellent talking point that helped me in my work not too long ago. And you said, depending on monopoly ISPs is like putting McDonald's in charge of ending hunger. And I, to this day, stick to that talking point because it really resonates. And I've used it in meetings. And I want people that are listening to this podcast to think about that, because it makes a whole lot of common sense.
Yeah, I sort of laid this out in an article in Nonprofit Quarterly called "The Signal Failure," which is still one of the articles I'm most proud of. I just feel like it really made a strong argument. I'm usually make pretty weak arguments. I just shout really loud, and that one I really worked hard at. So, some other things we wanted to talk about. The Connect This series. I just wanted to say we're continuing to do that, and I don't know how many people here watch or listen to that, but it's fun, and we got some really great shows that are still relevant from the past, and so I wanted to plug that quick. Rye is taking on the duties of producing it after Henry has left us for a different field, and anyway, we're trying to keep that up, and so I want to make sure people are still poking over there occasionally. We've done something that's really cool, and I think actually may be a signal of some other things we'll be doing in the future around tracking data. With Rye's team, Christine and Emma have both brought a real enthusiasm to using this thing called Tableau, and that's about as much as I know about it. So I'm going to hand it over to Rye for maybe a sense of what we're doing with the Rural Digital Opportunity Funding from the Federal Communications Commission, but also how we might be using that more in the future.
We're all talking about BEAD all the time, it seems like right now, but it's important to remember that there are billions of dollars in RDOF funding that is going through the various processes of getting things approved, and then those winning bids that were back in December of 2020 getting authorized. And so, there are people in this world that don't get excited about opening up a spreadsheet, and I am one of those people. And so it's nice to have the expertise of other folks on the research team to take those regular data releases, which I've got to say the FCC just makes super easy to handle. If I'm being sarcastic there, if you can't tell from the tone of my voice.
You didn't throw your shoulders back, so I didn't get it.
Taking those the data which are difficult to wade through for a layperson, and then putting them in an easy to understand way. And so essentially what we've done is we've created a real-time RDOF dashboard tracker using the FCC releases which are happening in a regular fashion, and turning them into something that you can interact with in a way that's hopefully useful to you, whether you're a local official or a local broadband champion, or you're just trying to get a sense of what's going on with all the money in the states. And so that tracker is live on our website, muninetworks.org. And you can go there and see not only a map of the U.S. and how much money will be going out through RDOF over the course of the next 10 years by state, but you can see who the top 10 bidders were during that auction, that reverse auction, and then also who's gotten funds authorized so far. And so that data is manipulatable, and you can build your own custom spreadsheets using Tableau and download it. And it's very exciting to be able to add this kind of capacity and this tool to our toolbox.
Right, and just to be clear about that term authorized, there was an auction, And the Federal Communications Commission, under Chairperson Ajit Pai, decided that it would be awesome if we didn't pre-qualify people and make sure they could actually make good on it. We just sort of see what happened. And what happened was a number of companies got won bids, and it's not clear that they have the capacity to actually achieve the goals that they have said they can do. And the FCC is evaluating those. And so the FCC is I believe, authorized about half of the money. Is that right? Rise nodding.
54%.
And so a little bit more than half. And you can tell the top bidders often haven't been fully authorized yet, or in some cases haven't been authorized at all yet, as the FCC continues to try to decide whether they have the technical competence and other factors that are needed before they authorize the money. We would expect to see that some of those awards may be canceled based on the FCC not being convinced that the company has an ability to perform. But we have no sense of the time scale. So this is something you can check in from time to time to just get a sense of where are we in terms of those RDOF awards going out the door.
Yeah, one thing as it relates to that I'm sort of particularly interested in is how the RDOF funding will interact or interplay with the BEAD funding, because my understanding is that areas that or projects that are being funded with RDOF money are not, you can't use BEAD money for those same areas, and it sounded like Alan Davidson was saying that the NTIA was going to defer to the FCC in terms of how that will shake out, and what was the word he used? Deconflict.
Yeah.
Deconflict. Yes.
I feel like I'm just hearing you tell me that we should have John Chambers on to go through some of this stuff, because he tracks it so well and he's a good communicator to explain what's happening and what he sees happening with these conflicts. Because what I'm very curious about is whether there is a method of deconflicting via the FCC, because I feel like NTIA is like, hey guys, we're doing a better job than you. You should just stop awarding money in these areas where it's not going to be as good. And I don't know if the FCC has a mechanism for deconflicting the way that NTIA wants them to. And I don't know, there might be an audience of 10 people for that show, but I'm going to serve them.
The reason why it's interesting to me is because, especially considering that the timelines with the stuff seems to be a little fuzzy, but it would be, worst case scenario is that there's an RDOF project that doesn't cut the mustard. And then also that the folks in that particular area lose out on BEAD funding, and then they get left in the dust, in all of this. And that would be, the worst case scenario for a community. So that's the reason why it's interesting to me, or, to see how that stuff shakes out.
Yeah. I just wanted to, maybe end on a positive note with RDOF and say that, a lot of the big monopoly providers have gotten all their money, and so we'll see what shakes out with them. But there are also a lot of cooperatives that have gotten their money released, including some of the big consortiums that bid in the auction. And then a muni here and there. So Reedsburg, Wisconsin, is getting $6.5 million over 10 years to build to 4,500 rural locations around town. So it's exciting to see, if we're talking about distributed solutions, those little wins peppered in there.
Yes, and Reedsburg is a particularly good example, because you said around town, but it's actually around not town, because they've been doing a good job over the years of expanding to Sauk County in places that are quite rural around them, and seeking state money. The Wisconsin grant programs, I think, have been smart about mostly funding fiber projects, often from local companies, including Reedsburg. But Reedsburg was one of very few munis or tribes that were in RDOF. And I think it was unfriendly. I think those reverse auctions are challenging for smaller entities to navigate. And it's really exciting that at least Reedsburg got out the other end and is doing good work with that money. So any other concluding comments, Deanne?
No, I have nothing, but I was going to say that I feel like we should bring back the term "cut the mustard" now that Sean has said it.
Slice of ketchup, cut the mustard. All right. Well, it's been a fun show. Covered a bunch of different topics. I feel like Sean was a little bit less enthusiastic about shouting about overbuilding than he was in the pre-meeting, but that's what happens when you let the steam out. We let the steam out too much beforehand.
Well, no, it's just that most of my cranky energy is because the Warriors lost last night, and
it was rough, and Steph hurt his ankle.
Yeah. So that's got me in knots right now. So. And I, of course, I live in Boston Celtics nation. So I spend a lot of time going to war with Celtic fans.
Well, we feel it, Sean. And I'm rooting for the Warriors for a sweep for the rest of the games. So,
yes.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. It's been a fun episode. Thank you to my colleagues here at the Community Broadband Networks Initiative at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. And hope you all have a great week.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at muninetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@muninetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Twitter. His handle is @CommunityNets. Follow muninetworks.org stories on Twitter. The handle's @muninetworks. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from ILSR, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. You can catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Arnie Hughesby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons. This was the Community Broadband Bits podcast. Thanks for listening.